Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Premier Chels, your source for all things Premier League, but starting with Chelsea first. Coming to you on your speakers and headsets. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jackie from Houston, and I have a very disappointed Rahul from Connecticut today. Rahul, I could see your face right from when we started. You just don't look happy today, my friend.
I don't. I was smiling because I'm thinking like here we are back recording and we were enjoying the early part of this season and it's quickly come to a stop.
Are we overreacting, or maybe it's just the excitement of winning a Champions League, hoping for a high, and then we're not getting that high anymore?
Yeah, look, I mean, if you think back to it, we spoke about it a few episodes ago. Performances were lacking, the wins were coming, they were kind of papering over the cracks. Now the performances aren't coming, neither are the wins, and it's kind of getting a little frustrating. And I don't want to sound like a spoiled fan, but you almost expect a lot more from this team, and right now things aren't going the way you want.
I know you don't want to sound like a spoiled fan, but I really think we are spoiled fans. And the fact that we've had so much success, as I've said, a lot of managerial changes, which usually lead to success. And so I'm not saying Tuchel out. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I think as Chelsea fans, you start to get a little bit antsy when things are not going well for a couple of games. And maybe that's from previous experiences of, oh, maybe if things are not going well, they'll chop and change and move. But we don't want to talk about that today. Let's talk about the Champions League. And look, we are the champions of Europe. So I got to keep saying that while we're in the championship. So who do we play? And let's talk about the starting 11.
Yeah, so we played Juventus. Coincidentally, we played Juventus the same, I guess, the season after we won the Champions League in 2012. So this was our first trip back to Turin, and it kind of went the same way it did about 10 years ago, where we lost. And fortunately, this time around, unlike the last time, we're not eliminated from the Champions League, but who didn't really help our case with the performance. And I know we'll get into it, but let's start with the 11 that was picked.
Yeah, and before we get into the 11, I think last time we were actually demolished 3-0 in Turin. So maybe this was our silver lining that we just conceded one. But like you said, we'll get into the game in just a minute. So starting 11, Mendy in goal. I think whenever he's fit, it's going to be very, very hard for Kepa to take that over. He goes with a back three of Christensen, Thiago Silva, Rudiger, who we always say is going to keep his place as long as he's fit. He's been playing very well these last few weeks. Azpilicueta slides into right wing back. We all know that Reece James is injured. He goes with the double pivot of Jorginho and Kovacic. So Jorginho returning to Italy. He was actually linked with Juventus multiple times a few seasons ago and even earlier in the summer as well. Alonso, and I say that name with a little bit of a sly remark there because I know you want to talk about that. The front three of Kai Havertz, Hakim Ziyech coming back in after a few games out, and Lukaku leading the line.
Hey, look, strong lineup. I think we predicted most of it, apart from maybe Alonso and Ziyech. So Tuchel playing the players that are available, like you mentioned, with Reece James, he was out injured. Mason Mount still injured, and N'Golo Kante, who tested positive for COVID, and we wish him a speedy recovery. And Pulisic continues to have his issues. So from the players available, a good lineup. But now we can get into the game and maybe dissect this lineup a little bit more.
Yeah, so let's start with the first half. I mean, we're back in Turin. We're excited. How did that kick off?
Yeah, it kicked off, what you kind of expected from a Juventus side, and Italian side with Bonucci in the back line, and they played deeper, they played defensive, they wanted us to have the ball, and I think we were happy to have the ball. Unlike over the weekend against City, where we were the ones sitting behind and waiting for an opportunity to counter. But Juventus have some good players, even though I think we'd mentioned Morata and Dybala missed out. Chiesa, Bernardeschi, Quadrado, our old man, Locatelli, who you might remember from the Euros. So a good squad, and they put in the right tactics that help the squad kind of keep it tight, keep it compact, and I think we didn't help our case either with our lack of sharpness, our lack of direct play, and kind of just wanting to knock the ball around. Sometimes we even gave the ball away, and Juventus could have scored from there. So overall, I guess the first half was mainly Chelsea on the ball, but no real end product.
Yeah, and honestly, I couldn't watch the game, but then I do catch up with the highlights. And I think everything you said can be summarized in this. I watched the highlights for the first half for all of 2 minutes because that's all they could put together. And really, there was nothing to report on. I mean, Juventus weren't amazing by any means. They had a couple of chances, but that was pretty much it. I saw no highlight reel of Hakim Ziyech, no highlight reel of Kai Havertz. I didn't even know he played the game because he showed up not once in the highlight reel. Lukaku had a sad little chance where he didn't really connect with the ball, but that's pretty much it. It seemed to be like we're out of ideas, Rahul, over the last few games here. We don't know what to do, and we're kind of stuck.
Yeah, it is. That's the case. I think from the Aston Villa game where they kind of stayed tight, packed the midfield. We did get 3 goals that day, but since then teams have done similar kind of tactics and put in the work to work off the ball and work hard to maintain their shape. And we've struggled. We struggled against Zenit, and we got a goal eventually through Lukaku. We struggled against, I believe it was Spurs next, and in the first half especially, we were not what we expect ourselves to be. Again, we struggled against City. So it's just kind of developing a pattern where teams press us, stay tight, don't really give us much space, mark Lukaku with 2 or 3 defenders. And that's kind of the story of this first half. And we'll get into the second half, but I just wanted to provide a stat was in the total game, we completed 771 passes and Juventus completed 287.
Right. That's incredible.
So we had a lot of the ball, like I said, and we knocked it around, but didn't knock it around in the right areas.
Yeah, and I think that stat you said, which is the amount of possession we had, which I don't know the percentage, but based on the number of passes you would assume is way more than Juventus, it shows that we're out of idea. It backs up the fact that we're out of ideas because we have so much with the ball and nothing happens. You've described nothing happened the first half. In my highlights, I saw nothing happen. So clearly we're struggling to figure out how to unlock these teams when they sit and defend really, really well.
Yep, and Tuchel saw it too, and he made a change, maybe a little bit driven by Alonso picking up a yellow card in that first half, but Alonso did go off, and Chilwell, who we've been waiting and wanting to see, finally came on and feeling positive. Watch the second half's about to start, and as soon as it started, it kind of almost ended because they scored within 12, maybe 15 seconds of the restart.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think we put up a meme a few weeks ago where we're brilliant in the second half, right? It's almost like you're playing FIFA, you're relaxing back, and your mate's doing really, really well. So that second half, you sit forward, you focus on the TV, you're just all in to go. But it doesn't seem like in the last few games, and this one in particular, like we come back focused. Either we're not receiving the message correctly that Tuchel's telling us, or when he's saying what he's saying, it's not coming off right because the tactics are not working anymore, which is, it's a very strange thing to say because towards the end of last season, you, me, and even Alex were praising Tuchel's tactical genius, ability to unlock the likes of Real Madrid and even Manchester City. And this season kind of seems stale. It kind of seems like we start well, and then towards the end of this last few games here, we just don't know what we're doing, which is a kind of a worrying thought. Like I said, it's early days and we don't want to say Tuchel out. That's not what we're here to say. But it definitely is a worrying thought to see that we can't really break down teams anymore.
Yeah, and it's worrying because you almost now look forward and say, okay, we have Southampton next. But then we have teams that we expect. I think we have Newcastle coming, we have Brentford coming. You almost expect that we will be the ones that will have most of the ball, and these teams will stay deeper, want to be compact and hit us on the break. So the question is, how are we going to get around it? And Tuchel gets paid the big bucks to figure out the answers. But as soon as Juventus get the goal, that it's going to be a much bigger mountain to climb because now they've got the goal, they've got the support of the home crowd, and they've got the defensive shape to basically just see things through. And even though we turned it on, we got a little more aggressive with our passing, with our runs into the box, the subs he made, it just never looked like we would have scored.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the game as a whole, Rahul. How come we can't do this in the first half? Of course, it gets aggressive in the second half. Of course, things pick up. I mean, back to that meme that we put up, we were doing very well in second half, means we're seeing something correcting it. And when I mean we, I mean Tuchel and the staff are seeing something correcting it, changing personnel, changing tactics. Why can't we see this in the first half of games? Because we would like to get off on the front foot so we don't come back and we're chasing, like you said, a mountain to climb. Are we not doing our research on a team? Are we not doing our tactical analysis ahead of time? Are we not picking the right personnel when we start the game?
I mean, it's like all of those are great questions, and can't really pinpoint the exact reason to why our first halves are so average, and then the second half, at least before the City and Juventus game, we were doing very well in the second half. It could be a little bit of us just wanting to not overcommit in the first half. Obviously, we want to win the game and get our goals when they come, but it could be a battle of just trying to figure out the other team, test them out, see how things go, and then in the second half you kind of turn it up, which is what we did against Spurs. But you can't do that every weekend or every game because you're playing, at least in the last two games, the champions of England and Man City, and then you're playing Juventus, who are a very good side. You've got to you've got to give them the credit. Yes, they didn't win the league last year, but they've got Allegri, who's knows what he's doing. He's set up this team before, and you've got a team who've lost their superstar in Ronaldo, but they want to prove a point that they still have good players there, and they showed it today.
Yeah, one other thing that's been popping into my mind, Rahul, is the early part of the season has been particularly tough with the amount of games that came really, really quickly and the caliber of team we played. I mean, some of the names that popped ahead was Liverpool, Manchester City, Tottenham, although we've made fun of Tottenham here, is not the caliber of team we should be worried about. Arsenal was thrown in there as well. I mean, some of these big teams. And of course, in Europe, now we've played Juventus and then we played the Super Cup as well, where you're playing a lot of these big teams. And I'm wondering if, I almost hate to say this, but like we gave our full energy and effort towards those big games. And now we're kind of seeing ourselves taper off where we're losing that motivation to turn up every time. And maybe I'm off the mark here. Maybe that it's something wrong, or maybe we did so well in those games that Tinkerman Tuchel's coming out now where he's trying to tactically get ahead of the next game and figure out who to play, how to play, change the tactics when we know his tried and tested formation had worked. Or maybe they figured out the tactics at this point and maybe it's time for a change.
I maybe not a change in formation or tactics, so much so as with the injuries we've mentioned at the top of the show. I think we need to play players that obviously complement maybe the likes of Jorginho and Kovacic in midfield, in that if you have Azpilicueta and Alonso as wing backs, that it's going to be a little bit slower pace than maybe a Chilwell and a Hudson-Odoi playing those wing backs, or even with one's more pacey and one slower. It just gives you a different dynamic to the team. Right. I'm not disrespecting Azpilicueta and Alonso, and that's not what the point of this is. I just feel we need to help our attacking side out, especially with Lukaku up top. We need to give him the service, and Azpilicueta can do it, Alonso can do it, but sometimes you just need a whole different way of doing things. Different players, Hudson-Odoi can dribble and take players on, which opens up space for other players. Azpilicueta isn't going to do that. Right. Alonso can make the runs into the box and try to get a goal, which in most cases he does. But with Chilwell, you get a different kind of approach to the attack where he's got the pace, so the defenders know if we give him the space, he's going to run in behind us. So they're a little bit more aware. So I think we can maintain the same formation, maybe the similar tactics, but we've just got to play the right players to open up these teams that sit defensively. And I think in today's game, those two changes I've suggested may have done that.
Yeah, and you talk about some of these players to complement the likes of the front three, and it sounds like maybe you're hinting towards Lukaku a little bit, because those two behind him can really interchange because they're more of what I describe as inverted wingers. They don't necessarily hug the touchline. They play close to Lukaku and try and do 1-2s, and they can have shots. So you're really focused on trying to complement Lukaku's strengths. I mean, you don't spend 100 million on a player and not build a team around him. So is that kind of what you're alluding to, of how to get the best out of Lukaku? Because we did see it early on in the season, but it seems like it's dried up a little bit.
Yeah, it has dried up. And I guess the two things have coincided, where Lukaku's lack of goals and Chelsea's lack of wins have kind of been at the same time. And yeah, that's what I was saying was, yes, we have Ziyech and Havertz playing closer to Lukaku, but defenders now know, especially the likes of Bonucci and De Ligt, that if we kind of take Lukaku out of the game, there isn't really another threat that, turns up from Chelsea's side. Yes, there's Havertz who can always pop up with a goal, Ziyech who can score one, but I think we kind of rely a little bit too much on Lukaku, which is weird to say because we're only 6, 7, 8 games into the season. But we've got to find a way to unlock and give him the service to then bring in the other players around him into the game.
Yeah, and we saw some of that a little bit early on with little 1-2s with Mount. So maybe we're missing someone like him. But I do agree. I think maybe having Chilwell or Callum Hudson-Odoi, who was going to that byline or that touch line and then looking for a cross, because we know Lukaku is the big man that can head it in. We're not talking so much about the Juventus game, Rahul, because I think there's not too much to report other than we just couldn't put the ball in the net. But one thing that seems to be an interesting conversation or topic of conversation for us to look at is what I would call the second season of jinx, which is we're not performing after winning a major trophy. I'm thinking back to when we first had Mourinho come in that first 04-05 stint. He did extremely well in that first season. That second season, we actually went on to retain the Premier League. But then after that, I look at Carlo Ancelotti comes in, has a brilliant season. Next season, gone, didn't perform well enough. Then I talked about, Robbie Di Matteo. We won the Champions League. We backed him up. I think Eden Hazard came that season.
Yeah.
Oscar came in. I mean, we had some amazing talent. I don't think it was next season. I think it was like 6 months later, gone. Then you start looking at someone like Conte, who, when he came in, we were all a little bit worried, switches to the famous back three and just stormed the Premier League. And then next season, underwhelming and then gone. And I'm not saying that, again, I think the topic of this is Tuchel not out, but it seems like maybe there's a trend here after we win something major. Is it our group of boys? And now we need to talk about the boys have rotated several times between different managers. Is it something in the club hierarchy that almost demotivates us, or are we just some jinx that we can't get over here?
I guess it's a combination of all of those things because it's happened a lot in the last, 10 years or so. But I think it's a little bit different this time, and at the expense of overreacting and starting these discussions after 2 losses. We've got to remember that Tuchel has only been here 10 months.
Yeah.
And yes, what he did in May in Porto will always be, remembered and in our memories. But he has a good squad. I think in the past we've had issues where managers weren't backed after being successful in their first season. They weren't given the players that they wanted. Tuchel had the players that he wanted. They kind of fit the system that he wanted to play right away. And the missing piece was Lukaku, and he's brought him in too. So now I really think it's down to him and the boys to kind of step up once again and say, okay, we did what we did last season. We had a decent start to the season, but now things are getting a little shaky. And you know, with Chelsea, if things start getting shaky, the media starts piling on the pressure. There's rumors coming out from one end. There's rumors from here. Players aren't on board. And I think we've got to avoid all of that. And we have another opportunity, which is great this weekend, to get a win, get some confidence back into the squad, and then go away for 2 weeks where the media won't be saying, well, now Chelsea have lost 3 games in a row and what's going to happen? Because, most of that comes from the media wanting to sell a story or just get rumors going. And we're at a point where no one's saying some people might be saying Tuchel out, but a lot of the fans want him to stay and have seen what he can do. And I think the boys and as a club, we need to just step it up a little bit, refocus, re-energize, and say, we have 1 game this weekend. We've got to get our win, do well, which will set us up for the next few weeks that are coming.
Yeah, and hopefully I was looking at the fixtures table. Hopefully with all due respect, again, the opposition that we're going to face in the next few weeks are not necessarily the elite champions of England or close to being the champions of Italy. They're a little bit more manageable, again, with full respect to all of them. But, Rahul, you got to make these games, right? It's the Premier League and anybody can beat anybody. I've said that many a time on this podcast. And so I think we need to just be focused, like you said, and then hopefully we can break some of these bad performances and really see some energy in that first half, because I think scoring that first half and not necessarily waiting for new instruction or change in players will actually give us a little bit of confidence. Because I think back in the players' minds as well, they almost say like, hey, we don't really perform in the first half, we'll wait to the second. But 45 minutes in football can go by really, really quick. So we'll wait and see. But any wrapping up thoughts on Juventus before we move on?
No, look, it was a game that we should have won, a game that we should have imposed ourselves as the champions of Europe. Unfortunately, we didn't do that, and we haven't done that now for 2 games. So, as much as we can say Tuchel got the tactics wrong in the City game, I think this comes down to the players and them wanting to step up. And so, I expect them to step up in the next game, and I expect that Tuchel gets his tactics right, and we put these 2 results behind us, because if we don't, things only get a little, not a little, things only get worse.
They definitely do. And speaking of step up, I hope we step up playing football and not choking out players like Alonso did in that particular game. But that's my wrapping thought on the Juventus game. Let's move on and talk about some good news. Rahul, you want to tell us about the Women's Super League? Because I believe they keep saving us every week this time around.
They do, and I guess this was the trend last season, early part of last season, where the women's team was doing well, and in fact, they played Birmingham City in the FA Cup, pretty much the same time as the men were playing against Juventus. And instead of giving you the goal scores, I'll give you the final score, and I'll have you guess who scored. So it was Chelsea 4, Birmingham City 0 in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. So. Here you go. The floor is yours to guess.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch either game this week. So, I mean, some of the names we repeat every single week. So I'm just going to go with Sam Kerr, Fran Kirby, probably. I see you smiling, so I think I'm right. And then the name that I like to say the most, which is Pernille Erde.
That's spot on. All 3 of them got onto the score sheet. Fran Kirby got 2.
Okay, there you go.
There's 2 from her. Sam Kerr got 1, and Herder got the other one. So even with the 8 changes that Emma Hayes made to the squad and brought in some of the younger players like Georgia Fox, we found a way to get through from the quarterfinals into the semifinals. And like I'd mentioned at the end of last episode, is this tournament started last season. And so it's continuing on now, and the semifinals come up next. But with the rotation and all the other players that got some game time, I think it was a good day out.
You know, what's interesting, Rahul, is that the men's team, I think, if I'm not mistaken, has got like 13 or 14 different players that have scored for us so far this season. Week in, week out, we talk about Sam Kerr, we talk about Pernille Erde, we talk about Fran Kirby. Should the women's team be a little bit worried that their goals are not necessarily as spread as the men's team? And by that, I mean, is if one of these key members gets injured or has to stop for a little bit or loses form, will we struggle a little bit?
That's a fair question. And I think the women's team has a deep squad. Like I mentioned, they made 8 changes for this FA Cup game. The likes that came in were Beth England, who before Sam Kerr joined was Fran Kirby's partner up top and was scoring a lot of goals. So we have her in reserve. We have Fleming, who plays and actually played this game in an attack with Cuthbert. So we have a lot of options, and we have players that come in and out of the team. And apart from those 3 that keep getting the goals, I think there's players that can come in and do the job. So I'm not particularly worried about, the goals coming from 3 players in particular. But like you said, injuries and suspensions or other things that come up can always hamper a team. But I think we've got enough depth, and we've learned from last season, especially in that Champions League final where we were beaten convincingly, that this season around we've come together and want to do better.
Yeah, hopefully they continue in this fine form and they can pick up last season's FA Cup, whatever. It's a trophy either way, so that'll be exciting if they can continue this way.
Yes, and they actually come back this weekend in the Women's Super League against Brighton on Saturday morning. So they'll be back in. If you fancy waking up early around 6:30 a.m. or I guess 5:30 a.m. for you, maybe with a cup of kickoff coffee,
There you go. Yeah,
you can tune into the game.
Absolutely, that sounds like a lot of fun. Shall we move on to the Premier League review now and talk about maybe a chance for Chelsea to turn things around and get a win under the belt again?
Yes, we should. Looking forward is always better than looking backwards, especially when you've lost. And Southampton coming up this weekend at the Bridge again. Not an easy game. They, I think, back and haven't lost to Manchester United this season. Have lost to Manchester City this season. They haven't won a game, so it's kind of almost set up for Chelsea to put in a good shift and come away with nothing.
I just talked about that big jinx after winning a major trophy, and here you are adding fuel to the fire. Southampton is going to get an opportunity here, but let's start with the predicted 11. Do you think we change formation and do something different? I think you answered this a few minutes ago, but when do you think real hard about it again?
I don't think so. I think he being Tuchel and the squad are now familiar with this back three kind of four in midfield. So I think we maintain it. Maybe we see a hybrid up top with maybe a 2 again, which I doubt would happen. But I think we stick to at least the back three.
Okay. Who you got in goal?
Mendy.
Okay. And then the back three you're going with this time?
So what I think and what Tuchel will do are two different things. So I'm going to go for what Tuchel will do. And I think he goes with Azpilicueta.
Okay.
As the right center back. I think Thiago Silva plays, even though he played the full game against Juventus. Rudiger maintains his spot. I would bring in, or I want Tuchel to bring in Hudson-Odoi at that right wing back.
Okay.
Jorginho, Kovacic, I think, maintain their spots, especially with N'Golo out still. I think Chilwell deserves to start this game. I know we called for him to play in the Juventus game, and unfortunately he comes on and we can see hopefully that he doesn't get blamed for that. And then I think up top Lukaku and Timo Werner, who didn't play today, so he's, I guess, fresh. And then if Mason Mount is fit, I think Mason Mount needs to come in, because the last 2 games have showed the importance of Mason Mount to the squad. He may not score, he may not assist every game, but his energy and his pressing and his closing and his linking the attack and defense shows you exactly why he's in the squad.
Yeah, especially when you're missing Kante, I think Mason Mount is pivotal to add that extra oomph that Chelsea are missing and that excitement that we sometimes miss. And Pulisic as well. We sometimes neglect to mention him, but he has a lot of energy, but unfortunately he's still out injured. So hopefully he'll be back soon. But let's talk about Ben Chilwell a little bit, Rahul. I think you're a big Ben Chilwell fan, as am I. We've called for him in the last few games. Do you think he needs to do something different to impress Tuchel? Because he got that chance in the second half, but again, it ends with a 1-0 loss to Juventus.
I mean, we don't know what he's doing in training, and that could be a big piece of why he's not being picked or why Alonso is picked. But from what I saw, I mean, Chilwell didn't turn the game around, but he didn't really do anything to hurt us either. The goal that came from the other side, and if he's got to do something different, I guess train a little bit harder. And when he does get these opportunities, impact it with not just being out there and performing, but maybe providing an assist or a goal, because that will definitely get recognized by the coaching staff.
Yeah, it's funny and it's interesting about Chilwell is I've always considered Chilwell a better defensive player than and I'm not discrediting his attacking, because Chilwell is brilliant at attacking as well. However, I've always considered him a better defensive player than Alonso. I think he's got more pace and he can get back into position and definitely can defend really well. So it's weird that in the big games like Manchester City or Juventus, where you would want a more defensive left back, that he doesn't get selected. But Southampton, where we would always be on the front foot, or you would assume we'd be on the front foot, that you're calling for Chilwell. I guess it's because he's not had enough game time here that you think he deserves it. So that's an interesting one. Callum Hudson-Odoi jumping right into the other side of the pitch here. He hasn't seen much, if any, game time so far this season. What makes you think Tuchel's going to bring him in?
Just the sheer factor that he brings the ability to drive and take on players. And the only other option to play at right wing back, at least from what we see right now, is Azpilicueta. And for everything that I said earlier in the show, Azpilicueta is a great player, a great defender, provides assists every once in a while. But if we want to attract players, open up space for the likes of Werner, Mount, Kai, whoever plays, even Lukaku, we need someone like a Hudson-Odoi driving from midfield or that wing back position. And I think between Azpilicueta, Jorginho, Thiago Silva, we have enough cover. If Hudson-Odoi drifts away and doesn't track back, we have enough cover. I don't think he would do that, but we have enough cover to make sure that we don't get exploited on that side. And the other thing is, the last time Hudson-Odoi came on against Southampton away, he was pulled off. So he's almost got a point to prove.
Very interesting that's a fact that you recall. I don't remember it being against Southampton, but I'll take your word for it over here. So look, it's a strong lineup, and I think it's an exciting lineup, probably with Callum playing right wing back and Ben Chilwell playing left wing back. I think that's going to bring a lot of attacking talent. You've got Werner, you've got Mount or Kai Havertz, you've got Lukaku. What's the scoreline, my friend?
1-0 to Chelsea.
Okay, I was going to ask, are you taking Chelsea for the 1-0? You know what, Rahul? I think sometimes you need a big win, and I know we struggle because going back to Aston Villa, you say without Lukaku doing his good finishing or his brilliant goals, it's a 1-0 game. I think Lukaku owes it to himself and to Chelsea overall to get back onto the score sheet. Werner needs a goal. Kai Havertz needs a goal. Mount needs a goal. Frank Kovacic needs a goal. I think I'm going to go for a 3-0. Maybe you'll shoot me on this one, but I need to see some goals to see us get back into the rhythm of things.
I would love a 3-0, but I'd also love a 1-0.
Tell me about it.
I'd love any win for us, to be honest. I don't really, I'm not picky, but my only thing is if we go behind again, we've only really come back once from going behind under Tuchel, which was against Manchester City at the end of last season. But if we go behind again, I think it's going to be extremely difficult to get back into it because Southampton will then just turn into a defensive unit, and you know how we do against them. So I think we need to come out strong, come out ready for that first half, take them on in the first 15, 20 minutes, because teams away from home like to stay deep and not overcommit. But if we come out attacking them and giving them a tough time, I think we can pick up a goal or two in the first half, and then that opens up for a 3-4-0 in the second half.
Fair enough. And we're coming up against a couple of our old Chelsea boys in Oriol Romeu. I don't know if that name rings a bell to anybody. And then Tino Livramonte, who left us this season. So
that's right.
It's going to be an interesting game. Should we talk about another couple of games before we talk about the Premier League table and then probably wrap up?
Yeah, let's do that.
So one interesting one I noticed for this weekend is Man United versus Everton, almost like a local derby, but Rafael Benitez coming back to Manchester United and big machine Cristiano Ronaldo rescuing them in the Champions League with a brilliant finish. We put up a meme, anything Ronaldo can do, Lukaku can do. Maybe we're shooting ourselves in the foot, but let's talk about the game, Rahul. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different game just based off of what United did against Villarreal in the 95th minute. It gives them a boost again after losing to Villa over the last weekend. And then Everton, I mean, they've had a good start, but then I think we'd spoken about their loss to Aston Villa, where no one was really expecting them to go down by 3. So a little bit of an unpredictability from them. But with Rafael Benitez, he'll keep them tight. He'll have them ready to counter Manchester United. And if Dominic Calvert-Lewin is back, I think he was out with an injury, he would definitely add to that counter-attacking threat. So should be a good game. Man United at home kind of don't seem to be the Man United that play away from home, so I might go for a 1-1.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, Calvert-Lewin is instrumental to their team. An interesting one that happened to Everton a week or two ago was James Rodriguez has actually left Everton.
That's right, yeah.
And joined one of the, I don't want to say the name of the club wrong, but they're in the Middle East area where he's gone. So interesting one because it seemed like he had followed Carlo Ancelotti, but let's not get off track here. Manchester United, Everton, for me, tough game, but maybe 1-0 to Man United. We'll see.
Cristiano?
Maybe Cristiano Ronaldo will continue with another goal. I was going to say hopefully Bruno Fernandes, because we know he's always good at popping up with a goal here or there.
But on the Manchester United parts, I'm looking at this win they had against Villarreal, and I think Ronaldo, I didn't watch the game, so please forgive me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Ronaldo had an okay game right up until
Right.
the end. Lukaku had an okay game, could have been right up until the end, but that's the difference is Ronaldo pops up in the big moments, and Lukaku kind of needs to do the same for us. And we need to play to Lukaku's strengths, like United do for Cristiano.
Yeah, and to be honest, Raul, I think Ronaldo, and I hate to make this a topic about Ronaldo for too long, but I think he just has a knack to finding himself in the right place at the right time. So hopefully Lukaku can gel with a couple of these guys like we talked about here, and maybe playing to his strengths, like you said, and he'll be in the right place at the right time. It takes me back to Arsenal where he made that lovely run
Right.
and destroyed Pablo Mari's career. I don't think he still played after that, but yeah, those are the things we want to see. But all right, let's move to a massive game here, and that's Liverpool versus City. And I say massive because it actually helps Chelsea either way. We can go with a draw and we can get a win and move up a little bit, or Liverpool or City, one of them lose and it's good. But who are you going for, and what are your thoughts on the game?
Man, this is going to be a good game because Liverpool fans back. They've been flying. They haven't lost a game this season. City, on the other hand, we've got to touch on that result against PSG and Messi scoring against Guardiola. Um, City did everything right in that PSG game, but they didn't have a finisher, an attacker. And it's weird to say that, they should have picked someone up because they just beat us. But I think that's what they've been missing. And on the other side, Liverpool have Mohamed Salah, who's flying, Mane, who's been getting into the goals, Diego Jota, who's been getting goals. Firmino comes on in midweek against Porto and gets two. So I think that's where the difference is going to be. Is they have great teams all through the park, but Liverpool up top just seem to have enough and a lot more than City in terms of goal scorers.
Yeah, so one interesting thing, I'll go back to the PSG and Manchester City game. I think Manchester City, from what I was watching, was a better squad and a better team overall.
Absolutely.
They just couldn't take their chances, which is an interesting one to think about. But I also read or heard, and I could be wrong, that it was the most expensive game in history, depending on who was playing and the benches as well. But I wanted to bring up benches, Rahul, because I think Manchester City has a bench that I think nobody can rival. Maybe PSG, but I mean, in England, I don't think anybody can rival the bench that Manchester City has, which to me might be the difference maker. Because yes, you've got your Mohamed Salah and you've got Jota and you've got others off the bench, but Liverpool, with all due respect, the bench drops a little bit in caliber compared to Manchester City's. And so if you're looking at a tight game where they're trying to cancel each other out, I think Pep has a stronger weapon on his bench in Mahrez or Sterling or Jack Grealish. It doesn't matter who he can pick on. And so it might just come down to that. I don't know if I got a scoreline from you for that game.
You didn't, because it's a tough one to call. And City actually, up until last season, hadn't won at Liverpool for I feel like forever. With fans back, with Liverpool flying, City not flying themselves, but I think Liverpool will have enough and should win it 3-1.
Wow. Okay. Good scoreline right there. I'm actually going to rival you just to make things interesting. I think City have something to prove this season. A lot of noise was made over them this summer, talking about striker like we just did over here. I think they're going to pip it 1-0 and take it from Liverpool.
Oh, so Salah doesn't. I think he scored for like 8 or 9 consecutive games too. So
yeah, he's brilliant. There's no taking that away.
Yeah, and he's not even a striker.
And hey, and we had him at one point, so let's not even get into that as well. So
just on that, I was watching highlights and they showed the Chelsea Arsenal game in the 6-0, and he came on and scored. And so they were saying, I guess 1 or 2 of his Premier League goals in total are from Chelsea, which is you'd never kind of think that. But yeah, it should be a good weekend, final weekend before international break. So unfortunately, we'll have to do without Premier League and club football for about 10 days, but a good way to wrap it up in terms of having a massive game in Liverpool and City. And hopefully we win ourselves, because kind of ruin the weekend again.
Yeah. All right. Just before you take it home, let me give a quick rundown of the table as it sits. I think we already covered this last week, but I think it's a good refresher. Liverpool in first, Manchester City, Chelsea, Manchester United, and Everton all tied in the next few positions, going down to 5th. And again, Brighton and Hove sitting there in 6th. They have also tied there, and they have had an impeccable start to the season, Rahul. I think we need to stop doing predictions now, because every time we do, we're off the bat, because they were the last ones to draw their game to catch up to us as well. Norwich in last, feel really bad for Norwich and Billy Gilmore out there. Burnley sitting in 19th, and shock Leeds United in 18th. So hopefully in the next week here we'll see a couple of changes in the table, but that's what we have so far.
Yeah, and you gave a shout out to Brighton, who play Arsenal, so I know who I'll be rooting for in that game. And then at the bottom, I think Burnley and Norwich play each other. So
yeah,
I think both teams haven't won either. So hopefully one of them picks up a win and can get started on their survival into the league. But
absolutely.
That wraps it up. Thank you very much for listening. Continue to subscribe, like, and follow us. It's at the Premier Chelsea on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Instagram. And on Twitter, it's at Premier Chelsea. And as always, please send us your feedback, and we love interacting with you guys on all the social media sites. And we will be back to do a Southampton review. And then we've been talking about doing some fun stuff between Jackie, myself, and Alex. So we'll, over the international break, hopefully come up with some new ideas, and you guys can join in too. But until then, stay safe and up the Chelsea.